Well, welcome everyone to this, the 61st annual general meeting of the Scottish Wildlife Trust, and that's welcome to everyone in the room here and also to the people that are joining us online. We'll romp through this bit very quickly at the start. At the start here, oh, there's Rushia right in the front. I was looking over your head there. I'll welcome our Director of External Affairs, Rushia Shah, who's going to tell us a bit about essential housekeeping. Rushia.
Thanks very much, and also welcome to the 90 people that are registered online as well. Just a few notes of housekeeping. So, just in terms of fire safety, there are no fire safety alarms, no fire alarm tests planned today. In terms of fire assembling, you'll see there's a sign at the back. There is a door just next to the lift on the left as you come out here, and you can go down that. That takes you to this side of the centre, and they're in the assembly point there. You can also go down the stairs and go through the main entrance, and there's also an assembly point there as well. There will be a fire steward that comes up to support anybody who needs additional mobility support at the time. In terms of toilets, toilets are located in the glass circle on the ground floor. It's a bright, well-frosted glass circle, so I wouldn't worry too much. It's right next to the reception desk, and there is an accessible toilet located just to the right of that as well. We are live streaming and recording this event. We're only filming those people on the stage in the panel, but audience members obviously might incidentally get caught on camera. If you have got any concerns about appearing on the recording, please do let a member of staff know. So for those joining on Zoom, please do say hello in the chat. You have an opportunity to do that. Even though your face might not be visible, you can still kind of message on there. Please do use the Q&A function in the online facility as well to submit questions to the panel. You can also upvote other people's questions, which is really helpful, particularly if there's quite a limited number of questions available for the time that we have. We will also be taking a selection of questions from the room itself and from the Zoom question and answer. And just can I remind you before I bring Kenny back on, if you do have a mobile phone with you, could you please put it on silent for the main session? Thank you.
Thanks, Rushia. And we'll come back to formalities and things just in a few minutes. But first off, I should have introduced myself. I'm Kenny Taylor. It's been my privilege to chair the Trust for the last couple of years. Well, coming up to exactly a couple of years with this particular AGM. So we'll be going back, as I say, to the formalities. But first off, I'd like to reflect a little bit on especially the last year, because obviously with meetings like this, then you tend to take stock of things that have been and maybe some of the things coming to the future, but we're largely reporting on what's been. So if you forgive me, unusually for me, I'll need to look at some of my notes with this, just to help, aside from anything else, we're trying to keep very, very tightly to time. So basically, as I said before, good to see you all here. And one of the things that I think is particularly appropriate is that we're meeting in the city of Dundee today, which is becoming a byword for regeneration of nature in relation to people. Some of you will be Dundonians, other people will be visiting. I hope most of you realise just what a revolution has been in Dundee over recent years, not least along the waterfront. The greening of Dundee is going ahead apace. And I was walking past a street mural today that was dedicated to a Victorian era botanist from here, for example, with lots of plants on it. You'll also be aware of the Garden Futures exhibition that's going on at the V&A. So there, if you want inspiration about how people and nature can interconnect, I could strongly recommend that. And I could also strongly point you to the way that Dundee will also be welcoming the Eden Project here imminently for regeneration in relation to people. And that's obviously something that's pretty key to what the Trust's about. So I thought I'd give a nod to that because it's just such a pleasure. Every time I come back to Dundee, there's something new in terms of nature. And I was here last night, and there were skeins of pink-footed geese flying over the buildings, heading into the inner tay to go to roost. I love it when we get the pink feet back. I think you'll agree with me that, you know, the energy of that is absolutely superb. So anyway, that's what's going on with Dundee at the moment. But I'll balance this here. This could be a recipe for disaster, because it's a very interestingly designed lectern that doesn't have supports at the right-hand side. So there could be, you know, all sorts of catastrophes in the next wee while. But it just adds to the general fun of it. I mean, Rashir was mentioning about, you know, people might inadvertently appear on camera here. I hope none of you are sitting beside somebody that you shouldn't be seen sitting with, thinking of his Coldplay concerts and things like that. It could be a bit of a problem. Okay, so 60 years was the last year, going up till April, and an astonishing set of achievements during that time. Basically starting from a glint in the eye with Sir Charles Connell and a few friends, starting with just, well, obviously a handful of members, and then even by 1965, just about 440 members, something like that. We've got nearly 10, we've got many more members than now, something like over 41,000. In fact, I was working it out the other day, that our membership growth means that every less than the fingers of one hand hours, somebody new joins the Scottish Wildlife Trust. So we're going up and up and up. That way, not in a hockey stick, I mean that would be a bit scary I think, but in a steady growth. So I think the founders of the Trust would be delighted to see, you know, what's been going on since 1964 when the Trust was founded, and now with 65 we had the 400 members I'm seeing here. And of course through this time, and what some of the founders of the Trust didn't really pay any attention to, why would they at the time, it wasn't common parlance, but we're now going through the twin crises of global heating, global warming, climate change and biodiversity loss. So that makes the work of the Scottish Wildlife Trust as important, if not more important, than it's ever been during the decades of our operation. But during that time, then also many other things have changed, and the worrying thing, of course, is that at a time of these twin crises, our politicians are engaged in a race to the bottom at the moment. They really are so concerned with the lowest common denominators of politics, and that's even without taking account of the narcissists and the dictators that we have to listen to, you know, day after day after day on the news media. So that means that the advocacy through bodies like the Scottish Wildlife Trust counts more and more and more, because our politicians, they need more than nudged, they need absolutely pushed to remember that nature matters, and it matters for itself, and it matters for us. So in terms of some of the achievements last year, and I'll come back to that during the main with slides, but there's one or two things I'd just like to flag up a wee bit, and if you hear this more than once today, that's no bad thing, because hopefully that will register some things in mind. During the last year, we actually were fortunate to receive around £2 million in legacy support, and also many pledges of money in wills, and that's crucial to our work. Of course, I think most of you would be thinking of our purchase of the Inverbroom estate, and we'll come back to that in different ways. I'll say more about that, but basically the take-home thing at this stage of our morning meeting is to say that this is the biggest land purchase that the Scottish Wildlife Trust's ever been involved in, so quite something to finish off our 60th year, and a very, very exciting one. And there are many, many other things that I'll come back to, illustrated by slides rather than me chuntering on about, you know, the 60th year. But suffice to say, it was a very exciting year to be part of Scottish Wildlife Trust activities, both on the ground in the Scottish Parliament, where there was more than one reception held to benefit ourselves and our supporters. And yeah, you'll see more of the detail just in a minute. But basically now, and there's a lot of elements to this today, so I'm hoping, and I know some of the staff here will keep me right and stop me chuntering on if I've chuntered to the wrong thing. But we'll now move on to the more formal bit of the meeting. There's a programme for, oh, I think I've got the thing here. Yeah. This is the programme for the day here. With our formal agenda, we'll start within probably the next minute, and then we'll take a very short break at 11:14, come back to a presentation and questions and answers. You can see the things there. So that will be the schedule for the morning. And those of you that can will be joining local group on a visit to the Miley Reserve in the afternoon, which I'm very much looking forward to myself. So this is the formal thing. Hence, I should straighten my tie, I suppose, for this. Okay, so I'd like to welcome you to the 61st Annual General Meeting of the Scottish Wildlife Trust. And this meeting provides members with the opportunity to scrutinise the main business of the Trust, to influence its governance, and of course to ask any questions relating to the management and the governance of the charity. So, can we turn our attention now to, further minutes here. Not minutes, the agenda. Can we turn our attention to the minutes of last year's AGM, which was held on the 7th of September at the National Museum, coupled with a bigger Jamboree Members' Day. So you should all have had the opportunity to access the draft minutes via the website if you wish to. So we haven't been notified of any, but I told you this was going to be interesting. Does anyone want to put forward any corrections? Speak now or forever hold your peace. That's good. So if not, and I don't think we've got anything notified online, can I have a proposer that we accept the minutes of the last meeting as a true record? If you're online, you can use the chat box to volunteer as a proposer or raise your hand if you're in the room. It's going to be interesting because I can't see the online at the moment, but Risha, you maybe can, I don't know. Oh, somebody at the back will. So, okay, can I have a proposer and for the minutes? Don't be shy, we need somebody there. I can't do it myself, so this is your chance for 10 minutes. Okay, so what could you say your full name, please? Liz Fulton. Liz Houghton. Nice. And could we have a seconder as well? Yeah. Trevor Woodford for the seconder. So thank you very much, and I'll take that as an acceptance of the minutes of our last meeting. And our senior management team have confirmed that there are no matters arising as a result of the minutes. And now we're going to present the Council's report and accounts for the year ending 31st March 2025. And this year was as busy as ever, and I'd like to express my thanks to our CEO Joe Pike sitting at the front here, and the whole management team and the whole staff team for all the work that they've done during the course of this year. In the course of my role as chair, I've had oversight of council and its committees, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow trustees on council and its committees for really a huge amount of support during this past year. We had a lot going on, a lot of demands on our trustees. But I'd now like to, I haven't yet, so there's nothing that needs to be said other than going into the achievements. Okay, is that right? Yeah, for sorry, there's so many, this is, I'm not trained as a juggler, but I have to juggle quite a few things here at the front. So basically, don't know, this is going back. Yeah, in our 60th anniversary year, and some of this, if you're not listening to me, you can see things on the slides itself. We had a lot of notable achievements, and that included, as I said, purchasing the 7,600 hectare Inverbroom estate. This is an area, whoops, I don't know why it does that, following the largest donation in the Trust's history. You can see basically stretching right to the armpit of Loch Broom there, with Ullapool in the distance, and in Challoch, that some of you have been off on the left-hand side. We don't go as far as in Challoch, but we're very close to it. So it's a huge area. I think we'll be more said about that in a little bit. But both river valley, floodplain, slopes, peatland, and montane areas there. So that was superb to be able to get that in the bag just at the close of that year. We also completed the 2-year next door nature, I don't know why it does that, community engagement project that saw lots of people complete free skills development. And at Montrose, which some of you I'm sure from this area will know pretty well, we had I don't know why it keeps going on, sorry, it's not me that's doing that, but we had a big year for common terns at Montrose. They used rafts there. And Montrose itself was featuring in different things, including in radio stuff. And at Benmore Coigach, which I think is our second largest reserve area, it's determined every time I flip to go on to. Well, the thing is, I'd like to kind of do it. I don't know, are they timed? Oh, right, that's annoying. Okay. At Benmore Coigach, we restored a lot of damaged peatland, and obviously this is something we'll be looking to do more extensively in the future. Words of the Wild, we had our first successful year of that writing competition, which got hundreds of entries to it, over 500 entries. This year, following on from that, there were more than 800 pieces of writing submitted, and the announcement for the winners of that will be in about a month's time, I think. So congratulations to Pete Haskell and his team for pulling that together. And in terms of advocacy, which I've mentioned before, we basically, with other groups, we're pushing the Scotland Loves Nature campaign to stress that Scotland's Natural Environment Bill needs to be a turning point for nature. And as I said at the start, our voice is so important with this, because many, many, many politicians have got their eyes on other things. Maybe some have got their eyes on some of the coos here. This is one of our no-fence cows on Shulton Wood Reserve, piloting a way of using transmitters to no fence to go up and graze in the way we want. I don't want to be dissing the cows, but it's kind of, I don't know if any of you know anybody or even have a robot lawnmower yourself. It's the sort of same principle, actually. But I feel disrespectful to this particular coo here by comparing her to a robot lawnmower, but that's effectively what's going on there. Squirrels, well, you know, everyone loves a red squirrel in particular, and we had been knocking on for 2,000 people participating in the Great Scottish Squirrel Survey, second highest number of sightings to date. And we launched the South Ayrshire Orkney and Small Isle Snorkel Trails. Sorry, I knew things would fall to bits. Launched the Snorkel Trails, which completes our set at the moment of 13 different snorkel trails around Scotland. I'm minded of the words of Kathleen Rain about Ring of Bright Water, which was the title that her friend Gavin Matchwell took from her and used for his book, but we've circled Scotland with a ring of bright water snorkel trails. I think Kathleen Rain needs a bit more credit actually for coming up with that particular phrase. Loch of the Lows, which some of you'll know, then the Cranoghide's been completely upgraded, and it's really, really good facilities there, and that includes for people to sit and see live webcam feeds and hear more about the soap opera that is the ongoing story of the ospreys that are at the Lows. And life has not been straightforward, so it's not quite EastEnders. It's kind of getting towards the the Highland boundary fault enders, which isn't but that's what's been going on. So. And we completed Get Set Scotland with Scottish Badgers, and that was to introduce families and young people to aspects of tracking and signs and all sorts of things. And we conducted one of the largest ever nature surveys using thermal drone technology to count deer across the Coiga Chanascent living landscape to inform our management plans. I think it's maybe some hotspots. The white there, I think, is maybe some deer. It shows up things that you would otherwise miss. So it's got great potential as technology for that. We delivered 3 woodland planting projects in the Tweed and the Kyle of Sutherland as part of our Riverwoods development phase, but we've now moved into the blueprint phase of Riverwoods, which is getting really exciting because there's buy-in from the Tweed Forum, Kyle of Sutherland, Rivers Trust, Spey Catchment and Bug Life and more. So you'll be hearing a lot more about Riverwoods and the planting of streamside riparian trees in the next wee while. So a lot more to unfold with that. On Handa Island, then the count of razorbills was the highest ever at 11,000. Can't really claim credit for that number other than for counting them, but it's good to know that they're there. And it's one of the most significant razorbillaries, if that's the right phrase, in the whole of Britain and Ireland, just to put it in context. And in terms of our other squirrel, the grey squirrel, there was the low number of detections of grey squirrels, which is actually quite good news because you'll know the story about aspects of saving Scotland's red squirrels and reducing numbers of reds. So, and that was thanks to SRSS staff and volunteers that was done. Sorry? Specifically in the northeast. Oh, specifically in the northeast, yeah. I mean, so specifically in the northeast with that, then the Aberdeen area is the one where we've made huge strides. Not quite there yet, but getting there. And we joined 30 other environmental organisations to show our support for the ban on sand eel fishing, which should benefit seabirds and other marine species. It's one of the clear things where we actually differ quite a bit from Europe in our perception of things. Maybe, no, I won't get into the politics and say one of the few, but anyway, it's one of the things that we differ from them. And Ed's here as our one of our 2 podcast people, and we had the first season of our podcast, which if you haven't heard it, please do go into that. There's lots and lots of material that you can hear and catch up on things and get a flavour of different reserves and aspects of our work. With Edinburgh Nature Network Monitoring and Evaluation, we were part of the final evaluation of what was going on with green spaces there. We're beginning a new delivery of See the Connection with coastal communities, and that's basically following on from an earlier project to get people's views on coastal things. So getting there with this, with a report was published in collaboration with University of Edinburgh, and then we're also launching an open data hub, which means that you should be able to get information about many aspects of our work through that hub. I mentioned before about 60th anniversary events, one of which was at the Scottish Parliament, and this was the Joe Pike with Speaker of the Scottish Parliament with a time capsule that will be opened again in, can't remember.
100th anniversary. Or 100th,
okay, so in 39 years' time, that will be opened. And I mentioned it also, but it's good to repeat it, 2 million in legacy gifts, and lots of people that have chosen to support us in their will. Lots of new members coming in, and say several per day. And basically that means that it's thanks to especially, you know, all of you that have come here today, but also across the country, all our supporters, all our members, all our supporters for making our work possible. So moving on to the next, sorry, I'll have to, there's a lot here, give me a minute. Okay, so I'd now like to hand over to Martin Cullen, our Director of Finance, to summarise our financial position. Martin.
Hi, good morning everyone. Just let me know if you can't hear me and I'll try and adjust my position. So I'm Martin Cullen, I'm Director of Finance Resources. I'll speak a little bit about the annual report and financial statements, which Kenny mentioned earlier, and just cover some highlights. I won't have as interesting pretty slides, I'm afraid. It will just be numbers, but I'll try and, let's say, bring them alive. So our annual report accounts for the year ended March 2025. I've put a summary here of what we can say is our profit and loss. It presents a positive financial picture. If we look at unrestricted funds and designated funds as a collection, it's a surplus of around 380,000. That compares to a surplus last year of 625,000. Our restricted funds show quite an exceptional result of 18.6 million surplus. That's almost entirely due to the anonymous £18.7 million donation received to acquire Inverbroom Estate. If we ignore that for a second, what we actually see in restricted funds, if we ignore that 18.7 million, is a near break even with restricted funds. That's not uncommon. A lot of our restricted funds work relates to large projects such as Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels, Riverwood to the Connection, where we receive grants from a funder and we spend it in the same year on that project. So it should break even more or less most years. The exception being when we do receive large donations, and in this case an exceptionally large donation, where it will show a better result, so to speak. We do, speaking of restricted funds, work hard to ensure that pipeline of projects and longer term initiatives with the funding is secured. So we do look into the long term to look at when projects end, do we have new ones coming on stream? Just to ensure we continue to maintain our profile and work to achieve our aspirations and visions as we articulate for our strategy 2030. As I mentioned, restricted funds, there is donations and legacies in there too. Some individuals and others will put a restriction on their donation, which we honour. So that takes time to spend sometimes. We might receive a gift through a will or donation with a restriction placed in it. It takes us time to plan how to then honour that. So we could see some years restricted funds show a surplus because we're making plans to honour people's wishes. Briefly on the permanent endowed funds, that is two investment portfolios we hold, one for Cumbernauld, one for Irvine, where all we see there is the income from the investments as the dividends, which we then spend on reserves in Cumbernauld and Irvine. So there's a little summary of our income and resources. Our income, I've excluded Inverbroom donation there because it would make the graph quite different. It'd be majority of that was single donation. Quite a similar picture to previous years when it comes to proportions. As Kenny mentioned a couple of times, we had a very exceptional year when it came to legacies, gifts and wills at £2 million last year. The year before was I believe 1.6 million, 1.2. The grant funders too continue to support the trust. And this year we received over 1.8 million in grants, and the year before was 2.5 million. That will fluctuate again based on the projects we are running. It won't be the same every year. We continue to be supported by the National Heritage Fund, players of the People's Postcode Lottery, the Esme Fairbairn Foundation, Nature Scott, and a large number of other generous funders, including the Garfield Weston Foundation. And here's some of our balance sheet. You'll see that fixed assets rose 11.5 million. This is almost entirely due to the acquisition of the first part of Inverbroom Estate, which happened in March 2025. Our bank balance, you'll see cash at bank in hand, rose by 6.5 million. Again, Inverbroom related. We received the donation to purchase Inverbroom, but we acquired the second part of Inverbroom in April, so we sat with around 6.5 million in the bank that we then used to acquire the rest of the estate. It was the purchase was split into two tranches. Debtors as well, we've seen quite an increase there. That's related to the very generous gifts we received in Wales this year. We had two particularly large legacy gifts where we were notified of them by the end of March. We recognised them as a debtor and then received them since. So it's just an accounting treatment that we have to put the legacies and debtors because we knew were entitled to them. Provisions for dilapidations, that relates to our properties. We put provisions aside to restore properties we lease when we give them back to the landlords. That increases due to the fact we have a new premises in Livingston in the Central Belt, which is for our East Central operation. So that's for our East Central team who manage our wildlife reserves and manage our Fife and that surrounding area. Previously they were based in our Jupiter location in Grangemouth. Finally, our defined benefit pension obligation, you'll see that it's seen quite an adverse movement of 545,000, and this is predominantly due to the recognition of a £750,000 what's called past service cost relating to legal issues that came to light in 2021. I'm going to speak more to that now. So the context of that benefit obligation, historically the Trust participated in a multi-employer defined benefit scheme that was used by many of the individual wildlife trusts across the UK. In 2005, a collective decision by the Trust was taken to close the scheme to new defined benefit accrual, and it's communicated to all involved. All parties, including employees, employers, professional advisors, and pension trustees. They believed the scheme to have closed in 2025, after which no employee made any further payments into it for their defined benefit pension. At that time, the scheme was replaced with defined contribution pension schemes that continue to this day for employees. What came to light in late 2021 were legal issues that, despite actions taken at the time, the defined benefit scheme may not have been formally closed in 2005. Following an investigation by those now managing the scheme, it was concluded that certain legal requirements had not been met by the scheme's formal documentation, and this meant that the scheme could not be considered formally closed until 2011. Legally, therefore, the employers were liable for continuing to make contributions to fund members earning defined benefit pensions in the scheme in the years 2005 to 2011. Consequently, some employees and former employees' pension benefits would be higher than was originally thought, which in turn means that there are now these additional costs for participating employers, such as the Scottish Wildlife Trust. So that's what's caused that adverse movement. What we have done is put sufficient financial resources aside for the creation of a designated fund, which in a sense is a ring-fenced fund we keep on our accounts, to afford the new payment plan that addresses this obligation over a period of 5 to 6 years. As highlighted in the previous slide with our income, the Trust has been very fortunate and incredibly grateful to have received a large number of donations and legacies from individuals this year. It's that continued support from our members and regular donors that allows us to achieve so much, as has been summarised by Kenny in his presentation before me. But that support allows us to have financial security for future years, to allow us to continue our work and to continue to achieve our strategy 2030. It also allows us to progress with those ambitions without needing to make as many financial compromises that would be required otherwise. And I'll touch on that with this slide here. So this slide here shows what's called our free funds. These free funds affect our financial reserves that are vital to guard us against financial risk, against unexpected events, which could affect our income or expenditure. You'll see at March 2025, our free funds, which is the blue line, were above the range set by trustees, which is the green and red line. So that's where we aim to be in when it comes to our free funds. It's higher due to very generous legacy receipts, being a key part of that. But you'll see if you look ahead, we forecast 5 years into the future to 2030, and you'll see the dotted blue line it shows the result of that forecast. It shows significant but annually decreasing deficits. The line does get shallower to stretch over time to 2028, by which point we hope the losses are much less, much shallower. We can only afford to do this, to run deficits to 2030, due to the support we have from members and from donors. What that support means, what this graph shows, is we aim to continue with the level of work we perform. We don't have a need financially to cut back on our objectives or cut back on what we achieve. We can manage to continue our hard work and our good work, and not make as many compromises as we might have to if we didn't have this strong financial point at March 2025. Saying that, what lies ahead are some challenges. Some people might have seen the news this week. Inflation remains stubbornly high. It's almost at 4%, whereas Bank of England aim for it to be 2%. That is a challenge that faces us. It has a real impact on our ability to deliver our impact. It makes it harder to simply stay still and maintain the level of work we do with costs increasing. A flip of that positive trend we're seeing, we've kind of seen through what many call the Great Resignation, when staff turnover across the UK skyrocketed shortly after COVID. What we've seen this year in particular is a continued fall in staff turnover. We're seeing that staff are staying, and we're not having to re-recruit so often, and that is really good. That kind of steady staff base just allows us to progress at better speed. I think all this is worth caveating that the Council of Trustees have very close financial oversight and management. So these forecasts are reviewed at least annually to ensure that we continue to deliver Strategy 2030, but also balances these financial risks and make sure that we maintain financial foundations so as not to jeopardise our work. Trustees and staff, we continue to proactively manage our activities, our finances, and to keep in mind what our long-term vision is to advance conservation of Scotland's biodiversity for the benefit of both our and future generations. And none of this would be possible without that continued support of members, funders, supporters, be that financial, be that volunteering time. We remain incredibly grateful that we can continue the work at the level we do. Thank you.
Obviously, we'll have questions after the break as well, about, if people want to raise matters. So I need to get back to my notes to keep us on track here. So yeah, basically, thanks, Martin, and as you'll appreciate, there's a huge amount of detail in that, and there's a huge amount of work. I know from my position as chair that, the input from all the staff, and not least all the senior staff, is absolutely invaluable to the work of the council as volunteer trustees. But the detail that goes into the financial management is absolutely, massive. So thanks, Martin, for that. And I think you'll take home, some messages from that in difficult times, the trust is really steering a course to keep doing what we do well and not back off from that, whatever the challenges are that are buffeting us in financial markets and other changes. So anyway, thanks for that. And our next formal requirement is to change this. Hopefully it'll stay on that. Yep, it will do. Reappoint our auditors, C plus T, who were formerly known as Shane and Tate. And they audited the Trust for the 4th time this year. A comprehensive audit findings report was provided to our Finance and Audit subcommittee of Council and subsequently to Council. That audit went smoothly and there were no causes for concern highlighted. So this provides assurance that the finances continue to be very well managed. And again, thanks to Martin and his team for all their work in this area. For information, best practice for organisations is to formally review auditors after the 5th year. We're satisfied with C&T, and in particular there's benefit to them remaining in post due to the impact of the acquisition of Inverbroom and how that's expected to have impact on our financial processes and complexities. So C&T are familiar with the Trust's business while remaining independent and are well placed to deliver a smooth audit process even with the impact of that major purchase of Inverbroom. So the Trust's Council proposes the appointment of C&T, and for this meeting could I request a proposer for the appointment. You can also use the chat function online if you're all very shy this morning, but anybody want to propose the auditors? Thank you. Could you say your name, please?
John Howard.
Did we catch that? Yeah, thank you. And a seconder? Erica Rigg. Yeah, thanks. So thank you. That's the reappointment of the auditors approved. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and of course we need to have a show of hands. Sorry, we've got a proposer and a seconder. I've just gotten that. So kind of a show of hands to show that you're happy with us to stick with our, there's a very clear majority in the room, and I'm guessing, is that the case online as well? Thank you.
Tell people to raise their hand, use the raise hand function.
Yeah, so could people online just raise their hands? I don't know how you say it. Or put their name in the chat, because we can't see from. So it's a thumbs up from Jill at the back. So that's C&T reappointed for another year. And now, okay, this is where it gets very exciting.
While I remove some of my things, would that help?
Yeah, okay, thanks. It's all very, nice and coolly designed here, except could do with a lectern that's about twice as big, really. But maybe I'm old school with that. So, and now to the results of our council election. And this year there are 2 vacancies on council, with one person standing for re-election to council this year, Jennifer Baxter, is sitting there. The council was delighted that Jennifer had put herself forward for re-election to Trust Council, and as I can attest personally, her skill, experience and professionalism have contributed hugely to council and the Finance and Audit Committee. We're extremely fortunate to have her, but she needed to stand for re-election, and we had 6 members putting their hat in the ring for first time election. Caroline Halliday, Alistair Greer, Corey Jones, Stephen Griffin, Jenny Law and Bob Gorzinski. So that was 7 nominees for 2 vacancies. So therefore the matter with that 7 into 2 doesn't go very easily unless you've just got 2 as the final result. It was put to a ballot in accordance with our Articles of Association. And this is where we need the drum roll. Oh, put it the wrong way around. And the election results are, and this is where you need, a few seconds of, no, I won't do that, sorry. I'm delighted to say that Jen Baxter has been re-elected to council, so welcome back, Jen. And for the other people that so kindly put their names forward, the new person that will be joining council, and look forward to meeting him, is Corey Jones. So congratulations to Corey. So thinking of council, sadly we're saying goodbye to 2 members of council who've done sterling service. First off, Bill Lambert, who very ably chaired the Finance and Audit Committee over 6 years and has now come to the end of 2 3-year terms with that. So Bill will be very much missed, as will Hayley White, who's one of our younger members of council and would have been delighted, I think, to stay on for another few years, but I think is moving south of the border, so it's going to be impractical. But Hayley's a great supporter of the trust, so thank you to both Bill and to Hayley for their support all through the years, and from trustees and staff alike will really miss the two of them. But it's great to have a new member of council and to welcome back someone that we know well. So now, before formally closing the 2025 AGM, we've got one other item of business, and council has decided to award an honorary life membership to Johnny Hughes, the Trust's former Chief Executive, I'm sure many of you will know, and our current Ambassador. Johnny made a huge contribution to the Trust over many years. I first met him when he was the summer ranger at Lochfleet, for example, and he worked his way from Lochfleet through to eventually being CEO. And he was instrumental in helping us to acquire Inverbroom last year, really in his capacity as an ambassador. So Johnny's not here today, but has confirmed that he'll be delighted to accept the honorary life membership. And I'd personally like to thank Johnny for his phenomenal contribution, and not least also for being a CEO who is a real expert on ants, which I think is just a great thing. So, for example, with Johnny, he told me a story when he met the late great E.O. Wilson of biodiversity fame. He didn't coin the word, but he made it popular. And Johnny sat for half an hour at an international conference talking nothing but ants with E.O. Wilson a few years ago. So respect Johnny for that, and also for all the other things. So honorary life membership, delighted to virtually present it to Johnny Hughes. I think we should give a round of applause. And with that, I'll close the formal part of the AGM, and we'll run about a few minutes, but we'll try and go have a 10-minute, very brief comfort break. So what's that? 5 to 10 minutes, and it could be difficult with a number of people in the room. So whoever's in pole position for the loo or whatever, use it. And that'll be followed with questions and answers for the senior management team. So we'll try and reconvene here just in a few minutes' time. But thank you, and that's the formal part of the proceedings over.
Great. As long as everyone can hear me, then I think we'll give people a moment to sit down and then we'll kick off. So I'm Jo Pike, the Chief Executive, and in the next few minutes I'm going to be offering a snapshot of some of the things on the horizon in relation to 3 aspects of our work: managing our land, influencing decision makers, and celebrating nature so that we can inspire people to act. But first of all, I'd like to say it's lovely to see everybody here in the room, and also great to know that we've got an online audience joining us. First of all, I'd like to just take a moment before I look ahead to reflect on where we are now. And for those of you who attended our 60th anniversary AGM last September, you'll have heard me say that one of the things that I think we need as we move forward is purposeful optimism. And if anything, that feels even more true 12 months on. In a moment, I'll be sharing a little bit more about our early plans for the Inverbroom estate, which Kenny has highlighted. And many of you know that we did acquire that this year. It's perhaps a good example of why we should be optimistic, and it's certainly an illustration of why that optimism needs to be purposeful. This time last year, we had only the earliest inklings that acquiring this huge 7,600 hectare estate near Ullapool might even become a possibility, let alone a reality. But it was precisely because we'd started to be more purposeful in our deliberations about future land management that we were able to engage in this opportunity. We've never made it a goal to acquire as much land as we can. On the contrary, We already manage over 100 reserves across Scotland, all incredibly special places and a huge variety of habitats. We know it takes significant resource to manage those. At the same time, we know that supporting other landowners to do more for nature is also a vital piece of the jigsaw, which is why we advocate for better support for nature-friendly farming through our policy and advocacy work. It's why through Riverwoods we'll shortly be announcing support for a wide range of projects, and it's why we've invested in building long-term relationships with landowners and communities through our living landscapes. But when the Inverbroom opportunity came along, helping nature recover at scale was a clear priority. And building on our presence in the Northwest with the work that we've been doing since 2010 in the Coic and Assynt living landscape was also an identified priority. To be honest, this is also the kind of opportunity that only comes around once in a generation. So despite the challenges of taking on a site at this scale with all of the associated complexities, we had to be purposely optimistic in order to make this a reality. And I'd personally like to echo Kenny's thanks not only to our dedicated and professional staff team, but also to our trustees who gave many extra hours of their time to carefully consider what we would be taking on before reaching the decision to proceed. So, to the three topics. The first being managing land to help bring about nature's recovery. And the reality is that it's getting harder to manage land due to the effects of climate change and an increasing number of extreme weather events. Sadly, we're also seeing threats like ash dieback, an airborne disease which is attacking ash trees across the country, a silent killer in our woodlands. As many of you will know, there's no cure for ash dieback, and the damage it causes is irreversible. Almost 1,000 species rely on ash trees for food and shelter, including woodpeckers, owls, robins, hibernating bats, young caterpillars of many moth species, and plants such as wild garlic. Alarmingly, it's been estimated that we could lose 80% of our population of ash trees. However, we've been very grateful to supporters whose donations will help us monitor trees for disease resistance, as well as conducting regular tree safety surveys. We believe that around 5% of ash trees may be resistant to ash dieback, which, if left to reproduce, could pave the way to a new generation of ash dieback resistant trees in the future. And alongside these challenges, of course, there are also opportunities, including through the application of new technology like AI and drones. In fact, we've just undertaken a thermal drone survey of the deer population at Inverbroom, which is the landscape you can see here. And I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you the working vision statement that we've developed recently for Inverbroom, because I know that you'll be interested in that. So it's 2075, 50 years from today. Breathtaking blanket bogs unfold across Inverbroom's uplands, merging with the Scots pine, oak and hazel of the regenerating temperate rainforest. Diverse grasslands are a haven for insects and small mammals, while healthy rivers support salmon, freshwater pearl mussels and many other species. Local people and communities continue to live and work in the landscape, supported by a healthy and resilient natural environment. Inverbroom demonstrating an ecologically rich future for the Scottish Highlands that supports rural livelihoods. Sustainable and regenerative farming works with nature to maintain the health of soils, ecosystems and natural resources, supporting food production, while simultaneously enabling wildlife to thrive. It's an incredibly exciting prospect. But of course, the reality is that in the last few months, we've been focused on things that are very practical. So the next phase will involve us getting to know the site much better, especially through ecological surveys. But also we'll be looking at our options for nature-friendly farming, working in really close collaboration with the family of farmers who farmed Inverbroom for decades, We'll also be looking at our options for community engagement and the possibilities for how we might use Inverbroom Lodge in the future. It will be a journey of discovery, and we're very excited to be starting it. So the second thing to briefly highlight, and I really must update this ancient picture of the Scottish Parliament. I thought it was up to date until I saw that the credits is 2011. This is all about our work influencing decision makers to make nature a priority. And we know that there are many competing pressures for politicians in the world at the moment. And that means that we have to keep reminding them that people do care about nature, and that investing in nature does not have to come at the expense of the economy, because nature is the foundation of an economy that's healthy and resilient. Looking ahead, the international focus is on the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, with its so-called 30 by 30 targets to see us protect 30% of the world's land and seas by 2030, and Scotland is signed up to that pledge. So if we look ahead a few months, we're focused on the Scottish Parliament election that will take place in May, and our policy and advocacy team has produced a 4-part blog series recently called Take Nature Seriously, which you can read on our website. And for those of you who'd like a more in-depth insight into what we're calling for, it will also signpost you to our detailed list of policy asks. And that's what it looks like on our website. So finally, it is so important, especially with all of the doom and the gloom that we hear about daily in the news, to celebrate nature and everything it does for us, as well as its remarkable ability to recover if we give it half a chance. In November, as Kenny mentioned, we'll be announcing the winners of this year's Words of the Wild nature writing competition at a special event at the Edinburgh International Storytelling Festival. And I'm delighted to say that this time the competition attracted nearly 900 entries in English, Gaelic and Scots, including from children as young as 5 years old. And on this map, you can see the amazing number of places from which we've received entries. Bringing the focus back to Dundee for a moment, Kenny mentioned the Eden project, and we're actively exploring the possibility of a partnership with them to build the capacity of underserved communities in and around Dundee to connect with and take action for nature, which will also be very exciting. There are so many other things that I could have highlighted, but I hope this whistle-stop tour has given you a flavour of a few of the things on the horizon for the Trust. But most of all, I would like to thank all of you for your ongoing support, not because you help the Trust, but because you are the Trust. So we're going to move to our Q&A session, but before we do, we're just going to hear a very quick advert for the upcoming series of our podcast, which I'm going to press play on, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Hello, my name is Ed.
And I'm Rachel, and we are the hosts of the Scottish Wildlife Trust's Words of the Wild podcast.
In case you missed it, last year we launched our Words of the Wild podcast, where we explored stories from across the Trust's work.
And, excitingly, we are back for season 2, so we'll be exploring even more of the stories from across the Trust.
Yes, we are talking to reserve managers, volunteers, partners, all sorts of people from across the Trust's work, from the hills of Rahoy all the way up to the beaches of Handa.
And we'll also be deep diving into some of the Trust's amazing projects that they've got going on, from Riverwoods to Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels.
In case you missed it, season 1 of Words of the Wild is available to listen to now via the Scottish Wildlife Trust website.
We look forward to being back for season 2, which will be available to listen to later this year.
Great, and with that, I will invite Kenny back up here. We've got just over 20 minutes for some questions and answers. Senior management team will be sitting over here, and Kenny will be fielding the questions. We may not get through every question, but we'll try our best to cover those. Thank you.
So we've got a little bit of time here for questions. Both we've got some questions submitted in advance. We can see whether there's other ones that come in online. But first off, given that you're present here, is there any questions from the floor at the moment that people would like to ask our panel here. I should have actually introduced the panel. Joe Pike, our CEO, you heard from just a minute ago. Martin Cullen, you heard from before the break. Sarah Robinson is our Director of Conservation, and Rashir, you heard from at the start, as our Director of External Affairs. So anybody, we do have plenty of questions, so again, don't be, there's a question at the back there. If you wait a minute, because people online need to hear you through a microphone. If you maybe could say who you are as well.
Is it working now?
Yes. Yep.
Right, I'm Alex. I'm with the Dundee and Angus local group. But I just had a question around your thoughts in relation to the culling of grey squirrels, and if it's a viable thing to do in terms of can we actually get the red squirrels saved, get rid of all the red squirrel, all the grey squirrels, and if it's financially viable.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'll pass that to Sarah Robinson.
Sure, that's a good question. I think we've got, well, as many of you know, we've got Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels project at the moment, and a big piece of the work there is culling grey squirrels, because that's at the moment the only option available to us in terms of preventing the harm that they cause to red squirrels by carrying squirrel pox, which doesn't affect the grey squirrels but does impact on the reds and kill the reds, and also, you know, they're sort of taking up habitat and or, you know, out competing the red squirrels. So what we've seen in Aberdeenshire, where we've got an isolated population of grey squirrels, is we have been able to take out most of the greys. We've literally gone from 10,000 squirrels, grey squirrels that were in that area, down to less than 20, which has been an amazing effort by the project, and it's just sort of been wonderful to hear the stories from people within the city now of Aberdeen who are sort of saying, it's brilliant, we're seeing reds come back, you know, we didn't believe you could do it, and it has, it's worked. So we are showing that culling greys can work. It requires a big effort, it requires ongoing effort, and we also know, and we are looking at things, particularly in that location with the City Council, about how we might have a rapid response team. Once we've got those sort of last remaining grey squirrels, how do we ensure that we don't have any returning, they don't come back? But then also sort of another part of the project which is working but is harder to deliver is sort of maintaining the Highland line. So above the Highland line we've got a red-only populations, apart from the isolated ones in Aberdeenshire and now Aberdeen City. And so we are maintaining that line. It's going to require ongoing effort, and we're able to sort of ensure that that red-only population is secure above the Highland line. Our ideal is to push down that line, and I think Aberdeen has given us hope that we would be able to do that if we had sufficient resource to sort of really go for it. Whether we can rid Scotland of all greys forever, I think is a little bit questionable, because they're not going to go from the whole of the UK. It would have to be a UK effort to take out all grey squirrels, and there's a lot. You know, that would be a sort of national effort and a UK effort. So what we're seeking to do at the moment is definitely eradicate the isolated population in Aberdeenshire and basically push down the Highland line. In addition to that, we have also been working with certain areas in the south of Scotland where you've got pockets of red in amongst sort of, you know, mixed grey and red squirrels, and so sort of securing those red pockets as much as we possibly can by continuing to sort of cull the grey squirrels. But yeah, it's a big task. It's a landscape scale task that's needed to do that. But I think Aberdeen has definitely given me hope, and many others hope, that we can actually realise this if we can find sufficient resource to make it happen.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll alternate. So we did have some questions submitted in advance. I'll give people in the room and online further chances as well. But the first question that was submitted in advance was from Elizabeth Galley. She lives at Errol in Perth, and she's asking, Are there further new initiatives being considered for the future to involve young people, both children and teenagers? Maybe Rashir, this is one for you, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. So our current focus is to build and extend on our existing engagement initiatives. We've kind of introduced quite a few things in the last few years. We have our Wildlife Watch scheme, which, sorry, I think it's going to the speaker, which works with children. And we have our Young Leaders program, which works with a number of young leaders, and they've been very active, producing manifestos and all sorts of really interesting outputs and advocacy. We have a Discovery Dent Packs, a legacy of the work that we did during the pandemic and which we've been building on, and that's something that we've been making available for educators, for teachers and others. So what I'd like to say is that rather than trying to create lots and lots of new things, we are trying to build and work on, build on what we know already works and reaches young people. And it's all part of our overall engagement model that the Trust has been developing on what we call a community-led conservation approach, which identifies and supports communities of people, including young people, to take collective action for nature.
Since I've got you here, actually, there's another question from Perthshire with Pitlochry, from Kirsten Parish.
And I'm actually here as well.
Kirsten, right. Can you remember what it is I've got a note of it here. What do you want?
Carry on.
Okay, well, sorry to put words in your mouth, but that's great. So welcome, Kirsten. And you asked, how can we make volunteering more inclusive, particularly in rural areas where transport's an issue? Volunteers seem to be overwhelmingly white, middle-aged and middle class. So, Rashir, I think it's also new.
Thanks, Kirsten. This is such an important question, and it's something that certainly I've been looking at in quite a bit of detail over the last few years since I joined. That we just had a kind of deep dive session on how we support a more diverse volunteer base this week with the team. As you can imagine, with over 700 volunteers, it's quite a difficult challenge for a charity of our size to balance the resources for things like full expense reimbursement and ensuring full diversity of our volunteer base. But our approach does involve providing a central volunteer budget, which individual volunteer managers can draw on to support volunteers who would otherwise find the cost of participating a bit of a barrier. We also do try and find cost-effective ways to support where possible, and try and find ways to align things. So that might include, for example, arranging pickup points along bus routes. We are a signatory to the Volunteer Scotland's volunteering charter, and through that, with other organisations, we are aspiring to making our volunteering opportunities increasingly more inclusive and diverse.
Thanks to both of you. So that was kind of good to have a question from within the room, but also, pre-sent. So, gentleman there. The microphone will come to you in a minute. Just hang on a minute. Roger Rossi's.
Thanks. Yeah, it's concerning the Eurasian links. This is one of my babies. Is there any movement on chances of reintroducing the links into areas in Scotland that can handle the links?
Is that another one for you, Sarah?
Sure, I'm happy to take it. No, thanks for that. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Eurasian links as well. There's a project at the moment, Links to Scotland, which we've played a part in, that is being led by Scotland Big Picture and Trees for Life, and they've been doing a lot of what is very necessary, we know from the beaver work, very necessary sort of bringing people into a room, having discussions, talking to all of the people who might be impacted or affected by links returning to Scotland about what that might mean, what that might look like, and trying to sort of get a sense of whether it's plausible from the people perspective, because that's what really means success. We know links could live here, we know there's suitable habitat, we know there's certain areas where they'd happily exist, and probably no one would see them, but everyone would love the fact that they're just there. But it's the people landscape that we've got to overcome. Yeah. So, and I think unfortunately, and many from this, who've joined us today from sort of Dundee or Tayside will understand some of the challenges with beavers and the illegal releases that occurred. That sort of set back the acceptance of beavers and unfortunately other species such as lynx. being reintroduced. So the work is a bit of an uphill battle at the moment in that people landscape to sort of get folk together. But I think that project is looking at putting an application in to undertake a trial. And I'm, on behalf of the Scottish Wildlife Trust, I sit on the National Species Reintroduction Forum, constant topic of conversation. It's always on the agenda for that group. So it's something that I know, we have as Scotland a responsibility through some of the things that we've signed up to in terms of, various political agreements. We've said we will look at missing native species and how we will reintroduce them. So there's a pressure there and there's an opportunity there, but I think it's a slow burn.
I know that.
Yeah.
I've been nipping that for a week.
Yeah. Well, keep nipping, because I think what needs to be heard is the voices who are keen to see this happen, because the voices who don't want it to happen are very loud, and they often put forward, rightly in many cases, the livelihoods argument. There's big concerns around that, but I think what we need is a trial to understand what the challenge might be, whether there is any impact and how it might work.
I think a lot of the problem is as well that people, when you mention links, they think, oh, what would bears and wolves? Well, these are things that are important. We would love to see them, but it ain't going to happen.
No.
But the links it's all over Europe. You can say there's no reason why there shouldn't be a population of links in this country.
Yep.
No, absolutely, and they can cohabit and exist, but I think some of our farming approaches are different to what they are where they've, on the continent. So.
Thanks. Going to need to move on. Sorry to cut you there. And I'm sure you can have a chat after lunch. And there's a couple of hands. This gentleman in the middle here, and then I'll go back to our pre. There's somebody.
I live in Monifies.
What? Sorry, could you get the microphone down there? Sorry.
I'm Eddie Mahoney from Monifies. A few years ago at an AGM of the killing of the squirrels was brought up, and it was said that Monifies is in no man's land. It's neither in Angus or Dundee. Therefore, there'll be no killing of the grey squirrels. Can I get an update on that, Bob?
I would have to look, because we are working across the Highland line and we have increased the number of people we've got across the Highland line, so I can't specifically talk about the location you mentioned without referring to some of my colleagues in the squirrel team.
It's just the fact that Monifies is in the brink. Some folk think it should be Dundee, some folk think it should be Angus.
Yeah.
We're left, but we're still getting grey squirrels. I get in my back garden regularly from Ashleigh back.
Right.
It's really useful information, so thanks, and I'm sure we can follow that up, but thank you for that. I'll go back to one of our pre-prepared questions. I think there's somebody that will be at the back after that from the hall, but I need to kind of bounce around for these ones. Is Nick Saxby from Montrose? Oh, you're in the audience, this is great. So do you want me to put words in your mouth? Because it was to do with financial sustainability.
Yeah. Is it on? Yeah. I can't remember how I phrased that, so maybe I was going to ask another question along the same lines, if you don't mind.
Yeah, is it pretty similar?
It's a similar sort of question, yeah. Right. So I was going to say, because we've seen lots of great success and progress that the Trust is doing, particularly on really big projects, but it sometimes feels like the sort of nuts and bolts of local small reserves, there's lots of pressure on resources for reserve managers and project officers and stuff, for things like path maintenance and fences and gates and all that sort of stuff. I guess I'm asking if there's any sort of risk that the Trust puts a lot of focus onto really big projects and then that overshadows the kind of day-to-day allocation of resources for local reserves.
Martin, could you say something? You can always get a comment from yourself.
It's a good question. It's one that senior management are aware of. We're currently looking at our fundraising strategy to take us to 2030 and refreshing that alongside a mid-term review of our overall strategy. A precursor to that is we have recently invested in exploring copper partnerships more with a new copper partnership, heritage partnership, Ben Connor and Post. And one area we're finding we've always lacked capacity is joining up where there is access to funds from copper partners and also certain government bodies and other avenues where ANGOs can benefit from joining up where that fund's available to meeting current needs. So down in England, it's the biodiversity net gain, for example. That's not here in Scotland yet, I don't think. But what we're trying to focus on our fundraising and our partnership team is joining up where there's corporate and other partners who want to invest, matching it with our need on reserves and not just doing new projects, for example. And we've got a long list of stuff we need to achieve, and it's trying to match that and not do new.
I mean, just to add briefly to Martin's point, I think staff will actually be quite pleased that you're asking that question, because, you know, something like Inverbroom comes along completely out of the blue, if we're honest, and is an amazing opportunity. We need to make sure that the impact of that is really positive across all of our reserves and not the other way round, as you've alluded to. And we're really conscious that that risk has to be actively managed, because we don't want people to feel like, oh, does that mean my work isn't important anymore because, you know, suddenly you've acquired this 7,600 hectare estate. But I do genuinely think it gives us an opportunity to bring more focus and attention to all of the work that we're doing across all of our reserves across Scotland. But in being purposeful about thinking about the future of our land management, it will also include some decisions that might be hard to take, but which we did take, for example, last year in relation to Jupiter Urban Wildlife Centre, where staff were telling us that we could use this resource, this staff time, better on our other reserves. We didn't own that. We'd been in limbo for many years just because of this 1 year rolling lease. And so we did take a step back, and it was a really hard decision to take. But the landscape had been, the industrial landscape had been transformed for nature. That will remain, and we decided to step back. So we're actively trying to consider that balance all the time, and it is a very pertinent question.
Thanks.
But,
and could I be cheeky, and I could put Alan on the spot at the back there, our head of reserves, just briefly, if you might want to say a couple of things.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. I'll make a run for it because there's obviously cameras. Sorry, just got this folk at home. Yeah, so I'm Alan Anderson, Head of Reserves. Yeah, good question, Nick. We obviously have a whole suite of reserves, different scales, different sizes, and different requirements. And we also have obviously a limited amount of staff to deliver that, as you know. So one of the things we have to do is prioritise obviously the work on across our reserves, and that's, we'd like to do more, but we have to prioritise that. We're really helped by members, particularly those that do active volunteers on the site, and that makes a difference where we have those members. Where we don't, we're looking in certain areas, and Perth's an example of that, where we have volunteers on a residential basis. They support the staff, and we're looking doing more of that work in the future. And we're conscious that where we can't get necessary labour to do that work, as Martin has indicated, we're looking at other financial resources that will free up either staff or bring in more of a resource. And very locally, you know, and again, Nick and Mark are aware of this locally, you know, you very generously contribute to the work in the reserves by raising money, which then gets reinvested in the reserves, which means that we move forward in the areas that we would be able to do with the resources we have. So there's various things going on in the reserves, and as I say, it's prioritisation, but there's ways of looking at those lists of tasks we've got and finding just more creative ways to deliver more things across our reserves, where, as Sarah said earlier, the demands are increasing and the resources are stretched, but there are ways we're doing that. We'd like to do more, but we are aware of that moving forward on that.
Thanks, Alan. And sticking with the big scale, and I know there's an online question, is there? Do you want to say what that is, actually?
Yeah, so we've got one question online from Roger Hissett in Ayrshire. So he's asking, what plans do you have to re-establish contact with members in areas where local groups are still not functioning properly since COVID?
Rashir, do you want to comment, or Joe? Rashir?
Yeah, this is a really important issue. We have had, you know, a small number, but certainly a number of local groups have had to close over the last 6-7 years. And, you know, that partly reflects how things are changing, how people are engaging is changing as well. A lot of people are more digital now than they were in the past. The pandemic, of course, had an effect as well. and we need to adapt to those new ways in which people might want to connect. Having said that, we've got a very strong model here that's been working for decades with our local groups and the way our members engage through local groups. So what we're looking at is we're currently with our new vice chair on the council for groups and communities, Stephen. Stephen is going out and speaking to various local groups. We're also speaking to other communities that we work with, and we're trying to find a way to think about what the next step is, what is the future for engagement at a local level for members of the trust, which will include local groups, but also include maybe other ways in which people can engage. And hopefully we can bring all of that together as well. So that's the plan, and it's very live at the moment. We are actually halfway through our current Scottish Wildlife Trust operational strategy for the work we're doing, Quality Strategy 2030. We're midway through that, and we're currently, as part of that, reviewing how we operate on a number of different fronts. And certainly looking at the future of our local engagement is part of that as well.
And since you've got the microphone, Roisin, there's a question from Jennifer Robertson. So I don't have my list here to know whether is Jennifer in the audience, maybe not. Okay, and it says, I would be grateful for a chance to have a question answered about Berwick Bank Wind Farm. This is why I wanted to attend the AGM. I'd like to know why the Scottish Government's been allowed to do this and why there isn't stronger opposition to it going ahead. So maybe very briefly, if it's...
We were hoping for our head of policy to very briefly talk to this one, and he is online, and I just want to double check, Julius, can he actually speak?
I can try to get him set up, if you want me to try and switch him on.
Or I could just answer on his behalf if you prefer time-wise.
He does say that he's happy to answer.
Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can we get audio contact?
My mic isn't working very well though, so
this is like flight control here.
This is our first.
Chair, do we want to take a different question?
Yeah, maybe while you're thinking about that, then I'll go on to a question from Susan Davis in Dunbar, and that was congratulations on securing Inverbroom. It's a reserve of considerable scale and complexity for the Trust to now manage. How much will the annual capital and revenue costs of the Trust's newest place be, and how will this be funded? So maybe Joe and Martin?
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. I'll start off and might pass on to Joe. I think for context seconds first, I mentioned a donation. A part of that donation includes initial funding. It's not just a donation to purchase it. We have funds to manage the estate. This, we hope, will be supplemented from an NLHF grant application we have submitted, which we're waiting for an imminent decision on. Together with those and funding generated with commercial income on the estate, so we've mentioned there's farming, there is residential properties, there's a lodge which we would continue to run as a holiday let, and they'll all help contribute to our aspirations for the site. As you expect, properties require capital investment. They have ongoing expenditure to generate a return, but the key is prudent financial management so we can maximise that return in a kind of a socially and morally acceptable way. When it comes to the question of how much it costs each year, we're still at the early stages of discovering and learning what the estate financial model looks like. We're prioritising where we know the investment is needed immediately, and I feel by the time we get to March 26, we should have, and that's after a year of ownership, we've been through 1 year of what the estate looks like, we'll have a much clearer picture of what the recurring costs are. But I think what the priority just now is we have that initial funding in place. We're hoping for a decision on a large grant application that will provide that financial security for at least the next 5 years. We've also been working with a fundraising agency, Compton, to assess our best options for fundraising beyond that period. And fundraising, so when we get that 5-year period, we have more funds in place to support the delivery of our draft vision, which Joe read out.
Thanks. Have we got audio contact or no?
I don't think it's going to work.
It's probably not going to work. Okay.
I can answer that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so
tight on time.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, the question was about Berwick Bank Wind Farm, and people would know that it was given the go-ahead for its planning consent, and As you can imagine, the Scottish Wildlife Trust is deeply disappointed. We feel it is a very short-sighted and ecologically damaging decision. We did join in with a coalition of environment and charities, including RSPB Scotland, the Scottish Seabird Centre, who are currently running the campaign, the National Trust for Scotland, and we did write to the Cabinet Secretary expressing our concerns very strongly. We also continued all during the time to raise concerns in more detail with government officials. Now the government kind of is seeing this as, and you can see in the pre-election phase, they're seeing this as a way to kind of like, as a driver, job creation, economic growth, achieving net zero targets. To be absolutely clear, the Trust is not anti-renewables. We do fully acknowledge the findings of the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, which identifies climate change as a major driver of ecological decline. However, we do believe that nature and climate should not be pitted against each other, and they need to be tackled together, not at the expense of each other. So that's where Berwick Bank is a bit frustrating and undermines that approach. There are we are now in a position where it is quite hard to kind of like tackle this one. There are a few things that still can be done. We would urge our members, if they're up for it, for writing to your MSP or even the First Minister to express your concerns. If you're not sure how to do this, we can provide some guidance on that. Also, we are, as we go into the elections, do engage with candidates who come to your door and just tell them how much nature is important to you and the people in your community, and do raise Berwick Bank as a specific example of that. And then, as I mentioned, Scottish Seabird Centre are currently running a petition, which, as I understand it, is currently still active. So you might want to check with them, one of our partners in this approach. Thanks very much.
We're getting squeezed for time here, but I think there was another question I saw from the floor. Was there? Are there not? No, nobody's hand up there. So in the closing couple of minutes or so, there's a very short question sent in earlier, and that was about, I think it's from Wolf Grulich in Edinburgh, who was asking about lists of basically biological records at the Red Moss of Balerno, which would apply to a lot of our reserves. I think the gist of the question is, how you access, that information or put it on. Sarah, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, we're happy to provide Wolf, just in case it's online, a list of the actual species that came from the site he was asking about. But just so everybody knows, all of our reserves, all of the information we have about species is uploaded to the National Biodiversity Network Trust Atlas, so that's the NBN. And you can search by our sites on there and get a list of any species you wish, which is brilliant because we're really supportive of open data. We want everybody to know what's there, and we encourage everybody to also submit records to the NBN, which you can do. They'll then get verified, but that's the best way for people to sort of be able to see what species there might be on any of our sites. It's a brilliant resource, and we work with the NBN, and we're one of their sort of trusted providers of data and information. And it's and if you're a little bit of a data geek, like I can get into, then you can spend quite a long time on that website looking at all of the various interesting things. But on Red Moss Balerno, I did look it up on the NBN. We have 31 species of Lepidoptera, which is butterflies and moths, and happy to provide that list to Wolf.
Great. So all power to the people that are really into biological recording of whatever. And obviously a lot of people will put in bird records, really useful, but if you're into very obscure groups as well, then all the better for that. Tiny question to finish off, and it has to be really, really brief, but Joanne Heald from Letham. Joanne's not in the audience. No, she's not, so I can speak for her. It says, what fundraising options are your teams considering in order to maximise income for SWT work on reserves into the future? Martin, you have, this is like just a minute with no repetition.
Okay, I'll try. I think kind of falls into the earlier question about kind of fundraising and what we're focusing on. We're really lucky. We do benefit from a really diverse range of income streams. One of the most important, obviously, is as a membership charity, our members are at the heart of that with their membership and their donations. And of course, gifts and wills. As I mentioned earlier, we are exploring further our corporate partnership model is working with corporates and other organisations and working to seek out further charitable trusts and grant givers that award large grants, really to match up where we have resource constraints, for example, with where funding is available, but importantly where it aligns with our mission, our values. We have a very robust and streamlined corporate partnership policy, so we engage carefully with corporates and consider mission and values alignment and reputational risk.
Thanks very much, Martin, for doing that without deviation, repetition, or going off the subject. With that, I'll need to call this section to a close. But thank you, everyone, both present here, online, and pre-prepared, and some people that were, in both categories, really, for all those questions. Really appreciated, and a really good range of things covered in that. Now, basically, thanks to the senior management team at the front here for fielding all those. That's much appreciated. But I'll now hand over to Mark Warrens, a member of our local group here, who's going to give a brief presentation about the Angus local group. So, Mark, over to you.
Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Dundee. So this afternoon we are going to take you on a trip to the Miley Nature Reserve in Dundee, and we've also got a little film to show you in a minute, which is starring our own Tom and Mary over there. The film documents their involvement on the reserve. I thought what I would do today is just give you a brief bio on the reserve, so you've got a bit more of an understanding of where you're going this afternoon, and a bit more background to the film. So, the Miley, it's a disused railway line, railway cutting, now a thriving urban wildlife corridor thanks to the Scottish Wildlife Trust. It's an ongoing story of transformation, community care, and quiet resilience. So where is the Miley? The Miley stretches for about a mile. You can see it in red there, through the Lochie area of Dundee. It's tucked in between housing, mixed-use development. You've got a school there, retail parks, car showrooms. So it's a really urban site. I believe it's one of the most northerly urban wildlife reserves in the country. It's a linear green corridor, and it's a place where nature is threading through the city. In the early 90s, this was neglected, rubbish strewn. It was just a dumping ground. But thanks to the SWT and volunteers, it's began its transformation. And now what was waste ground is now a refuge for wildlife and for the local people. Every metre of the Miley hums with life. Wooded banks, wildflowers, unmanaged grasslands. Over 100 plant species have been recorded here. It provides nesting spaces for birds, an important green habitat for insects and small mammals. It's not just a living space, it's a green space. So why does this matter? In a city like Dundee, green space isn't just a nice have, it's a necessity. The Miley offers daily contact with nature, improves personal well-being, and serves as an outdoor classroom for local groups and schools. It also acts as a green transport corridor, quietly doing its bit for sustainability. The reserve exists because people care. Volunteers, neighbours, school groups, everyone playing a small part. And as we know, when communities invest in nature, nature gives back. And the Miley is proof of that. So here's some of our local volunteers. You'll probably recognise some of these people on photos. From litter picks to tree planting, school visits to citizen science counts, this is grassroots conservation in action. 30 years of hard work and partnership. Looking ahead, I think I've missed a slide there, sorry. Looking ahead, the future holds exciting possibilities. The local group wants to try and expand the educational outreach of the area, strengthen the surveys we do, improve signage and access across the site, and build deeper partnerships with local people and local groups. It's an unfolding story, and we invite local people to help us write the next chapter. I just need to say a special thanks to all our staff, volunteers and supporters. Your time, energy and belief have shaped this reserve and will continue to shape it into the future. And from the local group, a massive thank you to Tom and Mary. None of this could have been possible without you, and the film couldn't have been possible without you either. Thank you for your commitment and dedication, and let's hopefully in another 10, 15 years we'll have a bigger story to tell on this site.
Hi, I'm Tom.
I'm Mary.
And we've been involved in the Miley for what, near enough 25 years. 25 happy years. We've thoroughly enjoyed it, and we hope to continue for another wee while yet.
We were actually given an award just a couple of years ago for our help with the Miley for such a long time.
The Miley was a tip, basically. As you may be aware, it was part of the old Dundee to Newtown railway line, and it fell into disrepair, and it was just an absolute mess.
So I was brought up in Lochee, and I remember my first foray along was on the path that was above the lines. It was on the top of the brae, and that was our route to go to this ice skating rink at Kingsway.
Some of our members, maybe 25-ish years ago, they led by John Wyman, they got involved with cleaning up the Miley.
I first came here in 1992, but before that there'd already been work by the local group to identify a local site which they could adopt as a reserve. There's quite a few other reserves in Angus and Perthshire, a lot of reserves down in Edinburgh, but very few that the Dundee members could focus on and adopt as their own. So this piece of land, the Miley, was very well known locally as being a sort of great place for nature, and the SWT and the local council carried out surveys here, and this developed the idea that this could be the Scottish Wildlife Trust's focus in Dundee. So the Miley did require a lot of work in the early years. We had about 3 or 4 years of clearing rubbish, talking to the neighbours, getting them to clean up rubbish which they'd deposited in the Miley, and laying the infrastructure.
Well, it was a horrible dump before it was opened up. Yeah.
There was a lot of dumping went on before it was developed as a path through.
Where we're standing now is actually one of my favourite bits of the Miley at that point. It was fairly open, there was quite a lot of wildflowers, you could still see the ballast that was underneath the rails, and there was some old sleepers that were still lying in the ballast. So it really did feel like an old railway line, and it was almost as if the railway had just been lifted up and the site had been left after that. We developed a plan, so we divided it up into 3 sections. Imaginatively titled Phase 1, Phase 2 and Phase 3, and this was the first section. It needed a little bit less work, and we could open it up from Loons Road up to the Harefield Road Bridge. So the first funding applications were for the infrastructure we needed here, and so which was a set of steps and the drainage to be cleared and the path to be built.
It was terrible. You were actually picking litter off litter, and it was weeks before we actually saw the path. This was actually the first urban wildlife site, real wildlife site in Scotland. There's loads now. There's lots of people who have taken over various old railway lines and turned them into wildlife places. But this one is particularly wild because we don't titivate it and make it tidy. It's never tidy. And that's has to be that way because that's the way the wildlife thrive best.
Many studies have shown that just regular contact with green spaces has a tremendous impact on your physical and mental well-being. The Miley is approximately 1 mile long and it's regularly used by commuters, cycling, dog walkers, kids fresh out of school, or just residents that are just walking their dogs or just out for a wee donder.
People think because it's in an urban area that it's just going to be another path in another urban area. And they come in and it's so quiet, they can't believe it. And this is a start. There's so many people love coming here. Well, the best thing that I think we did was engage with the nursery, and we used to take nursery children on a wildlife walk. Me and one of the other volunteers regularly took them on the wildlife walk, and we did that for a lot of years. And then the nursery closed, and so that stopped, and I kind of miss that.
It's just a nice woodland walk, and it's obviously very convenient for Dundee people to commute from one street to another.
And for the kids to take a shortcut down on the banks.
So Scottish Wildlife Trust's role is maintaining access for the public. So on an annual basis we carry out site checks to make sure that all of the existing infrastructure is kept in suitable condition. The paths, the steps, the stairs, the interpretation boards, but also because we have got quite a lot of mature trees that grow along the Miley, we do need to factor in the safety as well, and we carry out tree safety inspections on an annual basis as well. And if there's any trees that look like they could stand for another few years, we will then monitor it without removing it, because standing trees, even if they're dead, are of vital importance to wildlife conservation.
It gives you an insight into what's going on in the wild right in the middle of the town.
The Miley has a lovely selection of flora and fauna. You can see a wide variety of birds that commonly visit the Miley in the summer. These can consist of bullfinch, great tits, long-tailed tits, and occasionally we've seen some tawny owls and some peregrine falcons. Including the birds, there's a lovely selection of flora, so you can see a nice selection of native red campion, dog mercury, and on top of the ground flora you can see a nice selection of native trees such as hazel, bird cherry, and even surprisingly field maple.
At this time of year there's full foliage in the trees. You never see them, but you hear them. And it's thrilling to hear a wren giving you a telling off or getting too near its nest.
Well, the Miley is part of a network of green corridors that stretch right across the city of Dundee and the outskirts. And the importance of green corridors allow wildlife to travel throughout an urban environment without actually getting disrupted by traffic or housing areas, industrial areas. It's essentially a tunnel for them to manoeuvre throughout a busy environment.
The natural world is under tremendous pressure. There is very little actual green spaces. Okay, you've got trees and what have you, but you've very little wild, uncivilised areas where wildlife can thrive. The Miley is a golden haven for wildlife. It's also a golden haven for people. The Miley it's one of these places where you've got kids when the schools are on. The kids use the tunnel up the back here. That's where they have their lunch, and they have their cans there and their plastic containers for their food. And most of them, in all honesty, most of them do use the bins. But like everything else, there's a bunch of them who refuse point blank to use the bins. Dog litter as well. A few years back, it was a major problem. But that problem is easing now. You come up here, you still get the occasional dog poo, but it's vastly reduced.
I just hate litter. It's just horrible. Why people drop litter, I just will never know.
Unfortunately, we're not all in the first flush of youth, and it's not very. It's hard if you're taking a bag of rubbish to the end of the Miley for the council to pick up. We've often asked them for a bin, a Euro bin, and we've had no response to that. What we did have was a grey bin that lasted about a fortnight, then it disappeared. I think some of the locals have commandeered it. And so, it's slowly but surely, people are beginning to own the Miley. And this is what we want. We want the local people to own the Miley because it's theirs, so hopefully they'll look after it. And they are, for a large extent.
Yeah, we have a lot of litter pickers who are not on our litter picking list. They just come when they want to do it and they do it. We've met a few of them over the years and they've been really helpful, but they won't join. They won't join the rota. But we do have a flourishing rota of litter pickers, and somebody comes up once a week and picks up the litter that's all near the path.
There's very little litter on the Miley today. We've just walked to the far end and back. Very little litter, and I think that is because it's being kept cleared. It's being cleared up every week, and so people think twice before they throw things down. So it has a general effect as well.
When you come on a leaf pick, just chatting amongst yourselves as you work away, it's really quite uplifting.
So the Miley is now leased from Dundee City Council to the Scottish Wildlife Trust. It's a 25-year lease, and so it's the Scottish Wildlife Trust's responsibility to look after it during that time. It's well known by local people. It is maintained very well. It is kept very clean, and it's a lovely place to visit. So the Miley is now a protected site on Dundee's local development plan. And it's also a core path that runs down it, so it's very well catered for as being protected. And there's apart from threats from invasive species or the usual wildlife concerns of any wildlife site, then there's no reason why it can't be here forever.
Have to acknowledge that a lot of the work that's done here is voluntary based. We wouldn't be able to maintain the Miley if we didn't have the great involvement from volunteers. The volunteers visit the Miley far often than I do, and I have to acknowledge that as take my hat off to them for the tremendous work that they do.
The Miley is what you see now. It's not down to me or Mary. It's down to the dozens of people who volunteer officially with the Scottish Wildlife Trust. It's also thanks to the locals who use the Miley and cherish the Miley. The council, they're reasonably supportive of the Miley, but as I say, it's just the local people and the volunteers who really, we owe a really big vote of thanks, because these people are absolutely wonderful. That's my piece.
If it hadn't been for these volunteers, you wouldn't be able to walk on a path. It would just be rubbish. And it took a long time and a lot of hard work, and we're still working, and we're still getting help from so many people. I would say that everybody who has volunteered, even if it was only for once, deserves a gold star.
And in autumn time, it's a great time if you want to pick brambles. Bramble jelly from the Miley is much recommended.
Well, thanks, Mark, and thanks to all the volunteers, including some sitting in this room as key people, for that. I think the message got across loud and clear, and I'm looking forward to having a wee look on the ground with you this afternoon. So great stuff, and I think showing that the volunteers and the Wildlife Trust were really in early on the game, that luckily is now starting to be picked up across the country more and more, of corridors and networks for nature, to really allow movement of people and wildlife through urban areas, which of course is where the vast majority of our population lives. So thanks for that, and congratulations all round. We'll now, we're eating, bad pun, but a few minutes into lunch, but won't keep you for too long. We're just going to finish with a short, very short video of some wildlife highlights from the year, and I'll say a couple of things, and then we can be released to, forage. So we'll move on to, do I need to press something here, or will you? Yeah, a couple of times. Okay. Wow, that was pretty good actually. Who would have thought that kingfishers, although they're wee, never underestimate a kingfisher, as my granny used to say to me. So quite remarkable, some of that footage. And you know, some of the benefits of trail cams, I think you'd see there. It's astonishing what you can find out. So if you haven't used one, I could really, from personal experience, recommend it. And that was like an advert for whatever trail cam you care to choose. You'll probably discover things that you didn't know were visiting near your house, usually in a non-scary way, but you know. Anyway, I'd just like to close our formal, well, this was more informal, wasn't it, after the break, our proceedings now, and basically like to thank all of you first off for coming along here, some of you from nearer, some of you from further away, to actually physically attend here. I'd like to thank all the people that have sat online and hopefully enjoyed what's been shared with you this morning. And then I'd like to thank the staff team that helped to make today work and make it a success. In particular, Jill Hatcher, who's sitting up at the back here. Jill, do you want to stand up and take a bow there? So I think we should thank you, Jill. So Jill really is the reason that this has worked as it has today. And also we're in Dundee Contemporary Arts, and the staff here, I'm told, have been really, really helpful in the preparations for today and in the setting up. So I just sort of parachuted in and haven't met any of them yet, but for the staff team, they said, you know, thank you very much to DCA. And it's, you know, it's a really cultured place, Dundee, isn't it? No, and we've got the Rep just across the road, the V&A down the road. There's art starting to come into the street, you know, so there's both wildlife and art, as we can see in the Miley, actually. What a good combination. So, and thanks to all the staff who've participated in fielding questions, and also Ed for doing the videography and sound and things, and Alma for keeping track of things at the front here, as she always does so well. Alma's got the slightly mixed blessing of minuting our council and subcommittees and different things, which can sometimes be a pretty difficult act, actually. So I think we should have a wee round for Alma here, actually. So, lunch will now be served. It says between 1 and 2, and we've bitten into lunch, so I don't know, it's probably 10 past 1 or something like that at the moment. We do have vegetarian and vegan options. So you can ask the catering staff if you have particular requirements. And for those of us joining the guided walk, the bus will leave at 2 o'clock. That's from here?
Yeah, directly outside the main entrance. If we could all meet there for 2 PM sharp, the bus will get us from just next door, I think.
Yeah, and I think there was pre-booking for that, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so you know, you'll have to make your own way if you haven't already got a seat with your name on it. There. The walk itself will take approximately an hour, and the bus will return by 4 o'clock at the latest, likely earlier. So basically, thanks to you all again. Travel safely if you're travelling away from here and beyond the Miley and Dundee, and basically keep beating the drum for nature and the Scottish Wildlife Trust. Keep our membership on the rise and keep enjoying your local nature, because that's what it's about. You may not have fighting kingfishers in your back garden, but you will have amazing ranges of wildlife right on your doorstep wherever you are in Scotland. So thank you all for coming, and thanks for your support, and I'll give you a clap.